Okay, so here's something men will do. Imagine you've married your guy and you're kind of uncertain and maybe you've punched above your weight a bit and your wife is kind of attractive. And in your worst moments, that makes you doubtful about your own suitability for her and about your own attractiveness, and it makes you jealous. Okay, so then your wife, who's kind of attractive, she goes out and buys some nice clothes and you're gonna go out and she puts on a nice outfit and she's looking pretty good and you're a little upset about that because what if other guys look at her? And so then she comes and says, how do you think I look in this, dear? And she's pretty happy and maybe she's she's done something a little daring, and the jealous part of you gets the upper hand, and you know, you either don't pay attention or you say something rude. Now, here's something to know. I'm gonna tell you how to starve a dog to death, okay? So this is how you starve a dog to death. If it's hungry and it approaches its food dish, all you have to do is hit it on the nose with the newspaper. And if you do that 50 times, the dog will stop eating and die. Okay, if you do that to your wife 50 times, she will let herself go. Right, and then 3 years down the road, you'll go, geez, you know, you were so attractive 3 years ago. It's like you really let yourself go. What the hell happened? And the answer is, you got exactly what you were aiming for. And so then I would say, well, wives with your husbands, like, they're gonna have an ambition, you know, and maybe there's some inconvenience associated with that. Maybe he's gone a little bit more than you want him to be. Maybe you're jealous about whatever the hell he might be doing out on the road, etc. Maybe you're upset because if he's aiming at something high, that puts a responsibility on you. So you just get in the way a little bit every goddamn day. And then, yeah, right.
That's not a little
every day,
bit.
man, every day. I call that the 20-year lean. That's right, just an ounce a day, dear, for 20 years. It's like you'll be all bent over by the end of that period of time. It's like, you look around, you watch the people in your life, when they're doing something you want them to do not punish them. Because they'll stop doing it, and then you'll get exactly what you deserve. You watch instead, you watch that person, even if they're not doing it that well, you think, man, they're going in a good direction. And you think, at least, this is what Marge Simpson said to Homer when he accomplished something quite great. She said, I help by not objecting too much. It's like, at least you can do that. Don't get in the way. And maybe you could do something even more, which is to say, hey, have at her. You know, you watch your partner aim at something, they're kind of desperately pursuing a dream and they're doubtful about whether or not they're the sort of creature that could pull it off. And you come along because you love them and you say, hey, babe, you want to go to Florence and study art at an atelier? Have at her, man. I'd love to see what you could do. You know, and if you do that, if that's your aim, I'd love, you know, here's what happens. Here's what happens when you fall in love. You need to know this. This is what happens. Most of the time when you look at the world, you look at your memory. Now, a great artist will come along and paint a picture of a rose, and you'll look at the painting and you'll think, oh yeah, that's what a rose looks like. Because you're busy with your life and you walk by the flowers and you don't stop to smell them, and they've disappeared for you. And a great artist will remind you what's there. When you fall in love with someone, you fall in love with who they could be if they were the best they could be. You get to see that. That's what that love is, that falling in love. It's like you get to see who that person could be. And it's a gift. It's like a gift from fate. It's a gift from God. You don't get to keep that. You get a glimpse of it. And then it's up to you to realize that in your life. And you could do that. And then you'd have that person you loved. Right? That's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing not to do too, though, because then you don't get it. And the other person, that person that could be there, if you loved them enough, that person doesn't get to come into existence. And so you can risk that, you know. You ought to be attentive, though. And you can do that with your kids too, everybody around you. You can do that. You own a business, you can do that with your employees. You watch them, you see when they do something good, you say, hey, I saw that. You could do that again. Man, I tell you, people will love you if you do that. If you just spend the rest of your life doing this, you watch people, and every time they do something good, they sneak something good out, you say, ha, I saw that. Here's what you did. Pat, pat. I used to do that with my students. They'd hand in an essay, the first essay, and it just usually was bloody, dismal, wretched piece of writing. First of all, half of them were testing me out to see if I cared, so they'd just hand in any old garbage because then they wouldn't have to concentrate on the course. And then the other half of them were trying to guess what I wanted and, sending me cliches of all sorts. But now and then, in among all that utter tripe, there'd be a sentence where the person dared to actually say something they thought. And I'd circle it and say, this is all lies and bullshit and cliches and just dull lies, all of it. But here, you dared to let yourself shine through. And the next essay would be like 40% that. And if I did it again, the third essay would be 100% that. And you can do that with everyone in your life, including you. It's a good thing to learn to do to yourself is, you're not good for much and you stumble along stupidly and you're doing everything like subpar, but now and then you do something slightly better than you did before. That's a good time to notice that. And think, compound interest, you're 0.1% better this week than you were last week. You do that for 5 years, man, you are a new man. And there's no end to that. There's no end to up. There's no end to down, and that's terrifying, but there's also no end to up. And so you need to extend to yourself the same benefit of the doubt. If you see yourself, because what you do is you take a stumbling step forward and then, your evil superego gets a hold of you and said, yeah, well, you still got a long way to go. It's like, that's not the right response. The right response is, well, you're slightly less stupid than you were, congratulations. And you want to extend your partner that courtesy, So I said earlier, if you're having an argument, you think, okay, what do I want from this person? What do I want them to say? And then maybe you can get them to do it, just sort of falsely. Just act this out for me. Just say these words. And it's a stupid, fragmented, flawed, stumbling partly in the right direction. But really, you do that 50 times, man, you're an expert at it. You can do this with dates. I get couples to come to my therapy sessions, and they just hated each other, but they'd rather not be divorced. And I'd say, well, why don't you go and see a movie? It's like, we haven't seen a movie for 5 years. We're not gonna have a good time. And so then they'd go to the movie and they'd come back and they'd tell me what a brutal time they had, and they were both happy about that because they're, showing the stupid therapist just how dismal the situation really was. And I said, look, if you start having dates, assume, okay, we can do the math. 2 dates a week, it's 100 a year. You're gonna be married for 30 years, 3,000 dates, let's say. And maybe it's 4,500 because you can maybe have 3 a week if you're like completely bloody fortunate, but you could aim at that. But let's say 3,000. So you're gonna have 3,000 occasions to have a romantic time with your partner. That's your life, 3,000 times. Well, maybe the first 100 times could be not very good. Then you got 2,900 times after that. Right? So you gotta have that allowance to let yourself be kind of stupid and exploratory and just kind of barely get it right and see what worked and then just improve it a bit. But when you got, hey, if you get it right after 100 times, you got 2,900 times where it's perfect. Well, Jesus, that's a good deal. That's worth some work. Really, that's worth some work. So vision, and then allowance for incremental improvement and judicious reward. Watch your person and see when they're doing something better. It's like, hey, I saw that. Great. More. They'll love you. They'll love you for that.